So the data that you see now in here is being loaded from the database. Now let us go to add new, which redirects us to home page. And then in here, if you paste a valid URL and then click the shorten it button, this value is going to be shortened and then stored in the database. And this is what we're going to do in this part. Now the first step is to just go to Visual Studio and check this form, which controller and which action it does call. And then in that action, we're going to use DB context to store data in the database. In here, I'll just go to the Solution Explorer, and then here I'll go to Views, and then Home and index.c#html. If I scroll down in here, you can see that I have a form. This form does have the button Shorten It. And whenever you click this button, you submit a request, and the request will be handled by the home controller shorten URL action. Let us go to this action. So controllers, home controller, and then scroll down in here. This is the action where we're going to store the data in the database. But to store the data, of course, we need to first inject the DB context. So for that, I'll just type private, then app DB context underscore context. Now in the constructor, I'm going to inject the app DB context as well. So just copy this value, comma, paste it in here. I'm going to remove the underscore. And then down here, underscore context is equal to the context. Let us scroll down. In the action, we are just passing from the view the post URL VM. And if we check the post URL VM, pick definition, so right click and then pick definition, you can see that this has a single property named URL. And this is the original link basically that we need to shorten and store in our database. I'll just close this one. And then down here, I'm going to first create an object of the URL. There's going to be var new URL is equal to, and then this is going to be new URL. Let us import the namespace, and the namespace for the URL is shortly.data.models. Now in here, now we need to define the properties. So if I right click and I go pick to definition, I can see that the properties in here are the ID, but we don't need to define the ID because the ID is database generated because it's set as the primary key. The original link is whatever value we are getting from the user. So it's basically post URL VM dot URL. The short link is going to be basically the short version of the original link. The number of clicks is going to have a default value of 0. The user ID is going to be the logged in user, but in here, if we want, we can leave it as null. And then we are going to have date created and date updated. Let us set the date created to be datetime.utc now. And now that we have the object, we're going to first add it to the entity framework context, which is underscore context dot URLs, and then dot add. We're going to add the new URL. The data so far has been added just to the context. If we want to send this data to the database, then we need to use the context dot save changes method. Now in here, the short link has been set as just an empty string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function or a private method in here that is going to be used to just generate a short link. So down here, so we have, let's say, the class or the controller. Down here, I'm going to create a private method. So private is going to return a string. I'm going to name it generate short URL. It is going to take as a parameter just the length of the shortened string. And then down here, I'm going to define the constant string of chars, basically all the chars that a shortened URL can have. And the shortened URL can have uppercase letters, lowercase letters, or numbers 0 to 9. So I define in here all the possible letters in uppercase, all the possible letters in lowercase, and all the possible numbers at the end. Now that we have the string, what we're going to do in here is that we are going to generate a string based on the chars that we have in here by randomly selecting like length times like different chars and numbers. So for example, if you pass in here as a parameter number 5, we are going to randomly pick 5 times either a letter in lowercase, in uppercase, or just a number. Now to randomly pick stuff from these chars, what you need to do is that you need to create a reference of the random class. So down here, I'll just type var random is equal to new random. And this is just a .NET class that is used to generate random numbers. And then in here, it's going to return a new string. But this string will be created using the enumerable repeat method. .repeat. And this method is going to be repeated in the chars string. And it's going to be repeated length times. And now to randomly get the chars and the numbers, I'm just going to type in here .select. And then s that goes to s, and then I'm going to use now the random class reference .next. And this is going to be s.length. And then at the end, I'm just going to add .toArray. So basically in here, the enumerable repeat and then select and then toArray is going to return an array of chars. But then by using the new string, these chars are going to be converted to a string. Now that we created this function, we need to scroll up and then replace the empty string in here with generate short URL and then pass as a parameter the number 6. Now let us save the changes. I'm just going to put a breakpoint in here and run this project. Now I'm just going to type a URL, https, then .nethow.net, and I click the shorten it button. We reach the breakpoint, and if we check now the new URL object, in here we can see that we have the original link, and the short link is this value that you see in here. Let me close this one. Let me remove the breakpoint, and then continue button. This short link has been created successfully. Now, if I go to all links, you're going to see that from the database, we are loading 2 original links. This is the first one, and this is the one that we just created, which has number of clicks set to 0. Now, an issue that I could see in here is that in the home page, even though the URL was shortened successfully, we didn't get a success message in here as a positive feedback, so we know that everything worked as expected. And that is what we're going to learn on the next part, which is how to pass a message from one action to another so we can have a success message in this view.